Hello, everyone. Welcome to ArtTalk interview 13. We're here with Mike Azevedo. Mike, how's it going, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's all good, all good.
Awesome. Not a whole lot's going on. So you've been keeping pretty busy with like a lot of freelance work lately, like a lot of League of Legends stuff and things like that. So I appreciate you taking the time out to join us.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing this moment with me. It's really cool. I'm honored to be here. Super cool. So yeah, I've been pretty busy especially this year, more than last year. Because I also got I mentioned before the interview started that I was doing like 2 splashes a month, but right now as well I'm doing a few Hearthstone cards.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot of fun because they allow me to do whatever. But in a way, I don't want to get the wrong message there. But they really allow me to work on my own style and do my own thing. So that's really cool. And yeah, I have been doing a few.
Oh, that's
What's the commission like for that? Like, do they give you a prompt, or do they just like make something in the style, or?
Yeah, but it's very open. Like
wow.
one of the briefs I had was like a kung fu monkey. That was it. He could be doing like, yeah, it's like random words basically.
He's like, go nuts with this.
Yeah, but they allow me to like choose the weapon or what kind of monkey it is and whatever.
Wow.
That's
So,
actually
yeah.
really cool to hear,
Yeah,
because like I know some of the other card game like Magic and stuff, they're a little stricter, so it's kind of neat to hear that Hearthstone is a little more free flow.
Yeah, but I think it's the game is a lot of it's based on fun things and it's like the World of Warcraft, but in a very fun environment. So I think that's also part of it. I think.
Yeah, I've noticed that like they have like a lot of like themes and stuff with it, and like kind of like interpreting the characters and whatnot, and like more sort of like comical scenarios. Like, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Does it get like a little more strict, like whenever they like have like an existing character, like something that I don't know they've already established, like in World of Warcraft, and they're like, okay, you have to do this character, or do they typically just have you do like one that's
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit more specific, but overall it's very open. I would say like out of the 10 cards I did, maybe 2 had like a specific character and references for the character, like a very specific person or creature, but the rest was really open, really open.
awesome? Starting this thing off, kind of taking a step back, like you want to tell us a little bit about how you kind of got started, like with just studying art, and like I don't know if you went to art school or not, or.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, take us on the Mike Azevedo journey.
Yeah. You probably heard this before, but I started drawing when I was a kid, and I always drew my entire life. But basically, it changed when I decided. A lot of the kids that I was going to school with, I was like 14, wanted to do very different things. Like from me, I was the only kid that was into art, I think, that I knew of in my school. So it was pretty hard at the beginning because I didn't have anyone who like drew with me. I was like alone, and it was a bit sad. But I really wanted to do that. And then I decided to just go for it and just work on it as I can because I didn't have any guidelines as well. I just wanted to do this, and then I literally just Googled concept art on Google because that afternoon I found out about that word somehow, and I just Googled it, and then I found out about conceptart.org, which is a site that Evan and Dave that were here before, they were there as well. So I found that out, and I really loved it. because there were other people that wanted to do this, and I found out about like hundreds of different artists like Daniel Chavez and Dave and Evan and Alex Negre, a lot of different people, hundreds of people, literally. Miles Johnston, and it was like the first step. After that, it was a lot of studying, a lot of failing, a lot of things that like thousands of paintings, literally, and just posting it online, just waiting for asking for feedback, and then sometimes not getting any feedback, and then sometimes getting great feedback. And yeah, that was pretty much it from the starting part of it. And yeah, I just woke up here now.
I imagine that it must have been like a bit of like an interesting shock, like when you, I guess, like where you just kind of looked it up and then found these people and didn't have any sort of like knowing like what I need to be doing, and then like discovering all that. Like, how was that like experience for you? Like, were you like, okay, I got to start studying like hardcore, or were you like just figure it out as I go?
No, it was pretty much like the same afternoon. I just did like 3 paintings after that, and then the next day I did more paintings, and then I never stopped basically. I remember very specifically Miles Johnston, because I saw his work and he was really good, and we are the same age. I was probably like 16 when I found out about the conceptart.org, I think, and he was 16 as well, and he was way better than me. And then I really wanted to be good as well. So I just started drawing. It was a huge pressure at the beginning, because of that, because not only him but a lot of different artists there as well.
And yeah, I imagine it can be bouncing like that.
Yeah, we all been there, right? Sometimes that feeling comes back. It never goes away completely, to be honest.
It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's not like jealousy. I'm not jealous of Miles or anything. It's just that it inspires me to draw more and to practice. And it's the same with a lot of different artists. And I really like that about our industry, is that we are competitors, but we are not actually, in a way, not actually, I don't know, like violent against each other most of the time.
Like
aggressive, and
yeah. We're just like trying to learn together, which is awesome.
I think that's a huge benefit. Like that's a huge benefit to like the internet and like having these like, say what we're doing, like the groups and online communities and conceptart.org and stuff, is that you can kind of like I'm sitting in my room right now, but you meet all these people that you never meet in person, but like they're like, you know, just they're online, you meet them, you befriend them, and you wind up like learning more about art. You kind of study together, you got people that push you a little further, like.
Exactly. I can say that I would never be able to do this if it wasn't for the internet and that specific Google search. And seriously, I really think about that sometimes, that if I just heard that term, the concept art, and then just, oh, okay, sounds nice, and then I didn't look it up, probably none of this would have happened, which is weird. Yeah. But
yeah, it's kind of like that one choice like spiraled out and made like all these other different choices for you and kind of led you to where you are now. Whereas like you kind of wonder, where would I be if I hadn't done that?
Yeah. So it's luck in a way, but it's not. It's also not luck, because I know a few friends that wanted to do this as well. Were from different cities, and some of them just looked it up and just started doing studies and then stopped and then went into other things, to other like jobs. And I know probably like a lot of people do that, like they Google concept art, they maybe find that site or find a group, but they don't really take it like seriously in a way. They don't really study and try to get better. So it's luck. It's a combination of luck and determination, I think.
Yeah. That's a great mentality to have. you know, talking about how you look at your friends and colleagues as competitors, but you're not aggressive. I think it's important because a lot of these people watching, especially beginner artists, and even me, I'll throw myself under the bus. You know, you get that envy or that jealousy, and you kind of get, you lose that motivation when you look at artists that are on a different skill level than you. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really good mentality to have and to remember.
Yeah, I think one good thing as well is not trying to look at every artist to compare yourself with. I think like narrowing it down to a specific group of artists is good, because that's one bad thing. There are good things about internet and conceptart.org and all of that, but one bad thing is the exposure to many different styles and many different ways of doing art, which can really confuse you and make you like want to do like manga stuff and 3D and also dance and play, I don't know, and do crazy things. But
it starts getting like convoluted.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's harmful.
No, that's something
if
that
you don't
I
know what you want
recently, like, is that like I've actually like stopped looking at like all the major sites like Artstation and stuff. And not that those aren't like great sites, but there comes to a point where you're like, I have all these like references and all these other inspirations that are me that I really enjoy. And, you know, that's really all I need to do is surround myself with, or that's all I need to surround myself with in order to kind of aim my stuff in the direction that I want rather than try to over influence myself.
Yes, I agree completely. And it's good that you notice that like on your own. A lot of people, me included, spend some time before I figured that out. And the sooner you realize that, I think the better. And not necessarily like shutting down forever ArtStation and all of that, but not really just browsing it for hours and hours and hours and hours.
I think
without a goal.
Time, like maybe like a time period where you're like, okay, I'm not going to look at stuff for a little bit, you know, and I'm just going to try to think of it the best way you can, you know, like in terms of being like, okay, so whatever style you maybe want to do. Like I'm doing like a lot more like ink stuff lately, and because I'm trying to aim stuff in like a manga style, so it's like I'm trying not to look at, I don't know, just I've already seen like a ton of manga and a ton of other ink stuff I think is awesome that I have saved, so it's like I don't really need a lot more. I just need to try to improve that method, that style. So I don't know, but I mean, it's always good to go back to those things, but like it's good to take time away and be like, okay, spend time with yourself, you know.
Yeah. Definitely. And the interesting thing, I think, for me is that I can also narrow it down to a specific moment, which was like Dave Raposo used to do a challenge with Dan Warren on a group that I was on, which is the Crimson Daggers. That was very helpful as well. And I remember that they did a challenge, which was like based on the game called Gauntlet. And like a lot of people participated, and I tried to participate as well. And I remember the moment that I was thinking about joining, but I saw artists like, you know, Evan Melamusen and Dave himself and Alex Negrea and a lot of different artists that were a part of the group at the same time. And I just realized that I was not I'm really far away from being as good as those guys. I remember that specific thought in my head, and I remember that right after this thought, I noticed that I had two options. One is giving up and not like joining the challenge and just keep doing my stuff and then not really trying. And the other option is trying to do a different thing, because I don't want people to compare me with those guys. So I'll try to do something entirely different than what they are gonna do. So yeah, I decided to go for a more of a cartoony style and, you know, very exaggerated characters. And I really struggled with that. The challenge itself, not the style, but the challenge, because we had to do a lot of studies, and it was a hard challenge. you could not only do the illustration, you had to do sort of like studies to help.
Yeah,
the
I've seen
illustration.
some of them. They were like the blood sports, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you had to show all the study work and then your sketches and everything else that you did. And like, yeah, those were really smart actually. Like,
Yes. I think they forever and then forever for that. They helped a lot. And then it was like a month, I think, of the deadline. And then I saw they used to make like live streams and things. Sorry for the dog if you can hear it. But yeah, they used to do like, sorry for the noise from Brazil, by the way. We have a lot of music in the streets and people talking very loud, so that might be a thing that can happen.
the worst that happens,
Just
like,
to let you know.
Someone screaming in the background.
Just to let you know. But yeah, coming back at it, and then like a month after I did the challenge, and then they used to do live streams to reveal the winners, and then I won the challenge, and then I was super happy because I had no idea. I thought, oh no, I did something so different that they're not even gonna look at it. They're gonna just
Toss it to the side.
delete
Like,
my email. Yeah, just nope. Not our idea. And then I won. I was super happy, and it was really basically the first time I realized that you can do something different than everyone else is doing and succeed, which taught me a very good lesson to try to sort, in a way, run my own race instead of running against all the amazing artists that are out there. And yeah, just the classic thing of comparing yourself to yourself, right? It's comparing you to your past self and just trying to learn from your mistakes and not necessarily trying to do what everyone else is doing. So yeah, after that moment, I remember that I started to try to develop my own style and develop a way of doing things that was not out there already. So yeah, this story was just to say that.
I think that's important.
It
You
is
gotta like set yourself apart, otherwise, you just kind of get lost in the shuffle of, there's a million people doing a certain kind of thing, but if they're all doing that, that's like a number of people that you're competing with. But if you set yourself apart and you're the only one doing what you're doing, you don't have any direct competition. If they want that kind of aesthetic that you're bringing to the table, they have to come to you. And
Yeah,
I think that's like a very important lesson to learn, especially early on.
Yeah, and it's really scary to make that decision. I think it was really scary for me, at least, to just go in a different direction, because the sort of like the safe choice is drawing exactly what you see other people doing. So
you always have like a reference and whatnot, but when you're charting a new territory, I imagine it gets daunting.
Yeah, but I think like the most growth comes from those like not unsafe choices in a way.
Yeah.
So sort of like throwing yourself and doing a lot of course, practice and all of that, but doing the safe choice is never most of the time not the best choice in terms of choosing a path. I think. Sorry if I'm being like crazy.
No. Well, what you say makes a lot of sense, because like, it's like you said, you could take the safe choice and do what everybody else is doing, and you'll get work and you'll be okay. But like the thing is, everybody else is doing that. So honestly, there's like a lot of versions of you out there if that's what you're doing. Rather than if you do something if you take like that more like the scarier choice and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to do something that is just me, and say, okay, let me just develop this style that I don't really see or whatever. And that's the thing though, is you're the only one doing that. You know? So like if you develop that thing and it winds up becoming like a pretty distinct style, and you've kind of like cornered that. Like your style is very specific. Like I can see your stuff a mile away. So
Thanks, man.
yeah. I mean, like, so in reality, like if I know I want something that has like a lot of, I know you have like a lot of like you do a heavy focus on color, as well as you have like some angular shapes that you really like to use and such. So like if you want that kind of style, then you can directly be like, oh yeah, I need Mike Azevedo for this kind of thing, But if you want something that's like I don't know, like it's like Dave Raposa has his own thing, Evan has his own thing, and you can see when people really take time out and kind of distinguish themselves, like
it becomes their like identity, I think, like a distinct identity. And if you want that, you have to go to those people to get that. And I think long term, like that's the more rewarding and like the more success you'll have doing that. Like I think there's immediate gains if you can like quickly pick up like an existing style, like you can probably get some jobs in that vein. But long term, I think eventually you'll have to come to terms that if you want to kind of reach that next step, you've got to carve out your own niche.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a common thing to think about as well, is that you will have less jobs because you do a very specific thing, right? It sort of makes sense, but in reality, to be honest with you guys, it's actually, for my experience, it's way more opportunity and way more I don't know, more companies looking out for your work if you do a sort of like a different thing, not necessarily 100% different, but that 20 or 30% different than other people or most people that do that. And I think that if you find that middle ground, it's really good. I think it's way more opportunities for jobs because I don't know, you add something to the company. If they are in need of an artist, they are looking for freelancers, they will look for things that they don't have there. So if you're trying to do it exactly what they have, they already have that. So they won't ask for you, most likely, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the end, we're like working in a creative industry, so like
Exactly.
they want something new, they want something fresh, but they also want something that can still be them. So it's like when we were talking before we came on the interview, you mentioned a few other artists like Jason Chan, who's one of my favorites. He has kind of like a more like, everybody has like that, like say there's that 70%, of that can be the same. That's a lot of the fundamentals and everything else to someone's style. And then there's the other 30% that's like more stylized. Like his style leans a little bit more toward like an anime thing, where, like I said, you do like a lot more vibrant color and angular shapes and stuff like that. But at the same time, both work for the same company.
Yeah.
So there's like, when you say that, you're like, okay, so you can be different in the same company, do your own thing, and, basically not have to really conform, to anything else. Like you can just kind of roll with that.
Yeah. And of course, it depends specifically on the job that you're doing. If you are like a illustrator that is like a specific style, some of the times they might ask you to do a specific style, right? But if you are like a character designer, or maybe, I don't know, it depends on the company. It's like a lot of different factors as well. As I can't really say one specific thing that defines this, but like you can have either like a specific task that, like a splash art for League of Legends, some of the times is very specific. But they allow me to explore that 30% of Mike of whatever Mike means.
Well, that's actually like a question that I wanted to ask personally about like the League of Legends work, is that like I see like a ton of different people doing, or like, well, some people doing those actual for jobs, and like with the process with those, a lot of times it's like, it looks like they do like multiple different sketches of the same kind of thing, like several value sketches, and then eventually they pick one and they kind of like work it up from there.
Yeah, I think after the sketches, basically it's different from artist to artist. Some and also from splash to splash. Sometimes you like to change up the process. I like to do that a lot, not for Riot things, but for myself. But talking about Riot, I have a specific way that I approach the jobs, a specific process, which is like I do the thumbnails, and then they select one, and then I do sort of like a better line drawing of it. I just leave the thumbnail on the side, and I do the drawing again on a blank canvas. I don't like to go from the thumbnail to the main painting. I don't want to carry the mistakes that I made, and I do make a lot of mistakes when I'm making thumbnails. And yeah, after that, I just do like a color rough with some lights, and then I again start over from the line, and then with like base colors, and then shadow layers and light layers, and very specific amounts of layers. So yeah, it's very different from this that I'm doing right now. That's not the way I do the splashes. But yeah, I see different artists doing it in different ways. I don't feel very comfortable doing it like this, because I know that I will have like a bunch of mistakes of structural mistakes if I do this on like crazy perspectives, and yeah. So yeah, I have that specific process for that.
Okay.
I imagine more rigorous
Did that answer
planning.
your question?
Oh no, you definitely did. Like that was something that actually I was gonna pry at, was that you were doing the like a lot of times I see you, anytime I've seen you paint, it's always directly in color. And that's why I was wanting to know if like your process was maybe like a little different, because like I said, they do the thumbnails, they work them up in value, but I've never seen you really do like a ton of like value sketches, at least for that process anyway.
Yeah, last year I have been testing a lot of different ways of painting, which is super cool. So I started to try out painting in values and then coloring on top, which is cool. I enjoyed it, and I did a few paintings with that process, but I'm not sure if people can tell, because I think they're pretty similar to the other paintings that I did, but it was a fun process. It's fun. So that it's a hard question for me, like when someone asks me what's your process, or hey, what's the way that you do all the paintings, and
Yeah,
it's always different.
definitely.
Yeah, each one's kind of its own adventure is what I've been like realizing with my own work. Like each one I completely do differently.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes especially when I was starting, I really was looking for like a specific way that every artist did their paintings, and I used to think that there was one way, but as the more I studied, the more I realized that everyone does it in a very different way.
Yeah, definitely.
Since
yeah.
we're on like the topic of your like League of Legends work and stuff, like when you were were in your study stage, like when you were like hardcore learning all this, like what was like your first sort of break? Like how did you kind of get your first job?
Yeah, I think I did a few smaller jobs here in Brazil from smaller companies like animation studios that are here. So there was that, but truly the first big job I think I got was at Volta, which is a studio in Canada. It was in 2011, I think, or no, it was 2012, and that was probably the first big job I got. And your question was like regarding the job, or how did I get the job?
Yeah, I was just curious, like how did you like sort of once you felt that your skill was kind of developing, like how did you go about like landing a job? Did you just post online a lot, or did you just network? Or
I was, since I was doing work for like Brazilian companies, I didn't actually have to freelance, because I was like an intern, so I was like 18, I think, or 17, so I didn't need a lot of money, and I was like I just started university and the only thing I bought was games and water, things like
Essentials.
that. Yeah, essentials. So I was not looking for a job, but I was posting online a lot on. I don't think it was Facebook, but I think it was like CG Hub and DeviantArt and conceptart.org, maybe Facebook as well. But yeah, and then the guys at Volta saw my work. I didn't send any applications, and they asked me to do some character designs and some card arts, which is something that I did a lot, like card games. There are a lot of card games out there, and yeah, so I got my first job, and then from there, I think it was in a conversation with Dave. He introduced me to the Applebot, like 6 months later, to the Applebot art director, and then I started to do some cards for them, and then after that, just job after job. Sometimes I didn't have any work at the beginning, but later, basically a year later, I was working almost full time. Yeah, right now it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I keep hearing. Like a lot of people who are working as freelancers like say is that when you start out, it's gonna be like kind of gradual. You're gonna just do like a lot of personal, like you might get a bunch of personal clients. You might get like some small studio stuff or something like that. But then after about the first year is when it starts to pick up.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be posting online, like not necessarily all the time, but frequently. Yeah, frequently. Because sometimes people they get their first job and then they do the work and they stop doing the personal work. So, and then after a while they started asking why didn't they get like more jobs, and it's because they are not posting online anymore. And sometimes it's very simple, but but it's hard to notice because you're just focusing on other things.
So speaking of personal work, what do you, aside from like freelancing, do you have like anything specific that you really want to do? Like that's like personal to you, like personal projects, graphic novel, comic, game?
One thing I would love to do would be like a sort of like a Brazilian game, or a game that I worked on with some friends, or maybe designing a lot of characters for a game. I would love that. I don't think I have any specific games. I would just like to design a lot of characters for a game, and it would be a plus if it was like for a Brazilian company. Because I didn't talk about this, but Brazil is. I'm from Brazil, and things are starting here right now. You have a lot of small studios start trying to make games successful. And when I started out, literally, you had 0 studios. So yeah, things are growing, and I would love to see it grow more and more. And
Build
there are
that
a lot
community.
more. Yeah, I would love to be a part of that. That would be also a dream for me. It's not related to painting in a direct way, but
Sure.
to see the industry here grow more, and the artists get more jobs, and then to be able to sustain themselves only with not necessarily only, but with some local clients as well, would be very cool.
Yeah, I actually have I actually have an art friend in Brazil, Rodrigo Pascal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like we were talking about that, like, because he's developing a game, and
Oh yes.
like he was just talking about how like the industry is expanding and stuff like that, and it seems like things are becoming a lot more prominent there. So that's like really pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, it's fun that you mentioned him, because I saw him like 2 days ago. We went out to sketch with a lot of friends, which is cool. Yeah.
Your coffee sketch session.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's awesome, and he's really, really good. And his games is probably gonna be super fun.
Stuff is great for sure. Do you ever like, do you do a lot of like, is a lot of your work just digital, or do you ever like step into traditional? Because like speaking of Rodrigo, I know he does a ton of like marker stuff, and I mean, I personally love traditional myself, so that's why I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, most of the traditional work I do is sketchbook, like pen and maybe markers as well. But I do sometimes use gouache. I like gouache a lot, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I did like probably like 30 or probably like 20 paintings in gouache, and sort of like orcs and this kind of thing. And yeah, it was a lot of fun because I tried to use the same process that I used in digital, but without layer modes, but the idea being the same of like the overall process. And yeah, it pretty much works because it's the same but in traditional, which is interesting because I thought I would fail so bad, but it worked okay.
Yeah, that's something I struggled with so much, like, because I was always like, before I ever had like a computer and Photoshop, I was always just drawing in my sketchbook. So it was like I was trying to figure out, like, when I went to digital, it was like such a harsh transition at first, but then I don't know, the more you do it, I guess, like the more eventually you're like, okay, it's like when I sit down and draw traditionally, it's like I almost pay attention to how it would be in Photoshop.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. It's really hard. Like, it's a makeshift process, but yeah, definitely.
What kind of layer is this?
Yeah. Well, it's just like if I'm doing like a thing, like if I'm like going in and like I do like a ton of marker work, so then I'll go over and use like a certain highlight thing, like a white in gel pen or something like that. But yeah, I kind of think about like how I would do specific parts of the painting like in Photoshop and try to break that down. I don't know, that kind of helps the transition more, but it can still be a pain. Let's see here. I think we have a bunch of questions.
I've got some community questions here pulled up. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and go through some of them. Someone was wanting to know, Mike, how do you manage to break your illustration process into small pieces? He says he finds it kind of hard to take it step by step and working towards like a finished illustration. Do you have any suggestions for him, or?
Yeah, I think the idea is to basically treat it like juggling. You're juggling one piece at a time, and then you don't move forward until you're until this step is finished. So my idea is basically structuring, first of all, exploring the idea and the composition and design, and then structuring that once I think I have a good idea. And then after the structuring comes the part that a lot of people think is more fun, which is color and light. And I try to avoid using many things at once. For instance, when I'm doing thumbnails, I do it like black and white. I don't use color. I don't use layer modes. I don't use any fancy tools. I try to keep it as simple as possible. And when I'm doing colors, I try not to I try to have a good line art underneath it because if I'm just noodling with colors when I'm doing a complex piece, I'm probably gonna ruin it. I think I managed to separate some specific steps that I had. I'm just looking for it. Just 1 second. Like this. Okay, sort of like this, right? Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's basically the thing that I'm talking about right now is some of the steps that I have, like perspective, composition, design, idea, structure. And when I'm doing the idea, I try to avoid thinking about colors or light source or anatomy that much or edges. I try to focus on the idea. Some of it is overlapping, as you can see, that the idea and the composition and the design sort of like they are in a way the same, but they have some different parts, and it's the same for the rest of it. And I try to avoid as much as I can those two steps, the final polish and the effects, until it's time for that, and the rendering, right? Until it's time for it, because that really messes your painting up. I think one of the biggest things that you can do to ruin your painting is start rendering it at the beginning. Of course, there are people that can do it, and sometimes it works, but it's a very easy way to fail when you're starting out. And yes, these are some of the questions that I have in my head when I'm doing those steps, right? So yeah, I think that's the way I separate my process when I'm doing the very structured, sort of like the riot paintings. Sometimes I try to mess it.
To be like flawless.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
That makes a lot
reliable,
of
right?
It looks good. Like I like the sections here because like you have like your idea, composition, and design where you're just focusing on the core concept, and then you go into like, okay, now that I have this, how do I make it actually structurally exist? You do the math on it, and then you get your anatomy and everything in place. Like it's a smart process. Like looking at it.
Thanks.
Yeah, we couldn't hope for a better answer. Here's a chart.
I can send this to the person that asked if he wants, or I can send it to you guys, and you guys can.
Yeah, we'll
absolutely
to the person.
Yeah, we can post that up like in the group.
Okay, cool.
That's
cool.
something that like gosh, when it comes like that's something I realize more and more lately actually, because like I spend so much time trying to like sketch and do like a painting or whatever, and then like go into rendering immediately. Then you realize that you need to spend like, I think a huge thing that really helps like a lot of people is just spend a lot more time drawing. Just drawing the ideas, sketching out, like just don't worry about like any colors or any like you said, keep it as simple as possible, silhouettes, shapes, interesting things, basically the story of whatever it is you're trying to draw. And then from there the rendering and all these other like fundamental things come into place. And
yeah,
that kind of ties into this next question. This says how do you learn to properly study instead of just mindlessly copying from from reference and not really learning?
I think one thing about this is that you have to be aware when you're studying that it has to be hard. If you're doing some study that you're not struggling, you're not learning for sure. So you have to be struggling. That's the first step, and you have to embrace the struggle. And after that, I think it's really understanding that knowledge without application is the same as ignorance, right? You have to apply the knowledge that you learn. So you have to really, first of all, be focused on what you're trying to learn with the study that you're doing. Be very clear about what is it that you want to get from it. I think that helps me a lot. Without just being, okay, here's a value study. I try to be specific, like what do I want to learn about the values here? Oh, I do like the shadows, the occlusion shadows that this person uses, so that I'm going to try to learn why they are using the shadows that way and where, and so I can do it in my own paintings. So yeah, I think those things are very important. And one thing that is related to that, but not one thing that is related to that is that when you're doing something that is very safe, you're probably not studying. So sometimes when you're working, you think that you're learning, or yet that you don't need to practice anymore because you're working and you don't and you are already learning in a way. But I think that it's very important to take time after the job is done, or some around, I don't know, some other time when you're not working, because when you do that, you explore. And I think learning, it's way better when you explore things and you're doing things in a hard way. not necessarily just applying things, right? You have to practice after you're doing your sort of like deliberate practice, not during the performance that that you're doing the work, the reliable work. So I don't consider really for instance, the right work as practice. If I do that a lot of my day, I still have to do the studies after, right? Because I'm applying a specific way of doing things there, and that's not really helping me to learn, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. Like, especially like when you're saying like, you know, like not just like studying, but like figuring out like a sort of like a mission statement, like why are they using the shadows? Like it's not just, oh, I'm mimicking what they're doing, but I'm actually trying to figure out the logic behind what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's the same with photos and everything.
Yeah, like can you take it and like apply it to an original piece? Like, can I get that kind of shadow system? Now that I've like done, like I've replicated what he does, I've figured out why he chose those things. Can I now use that in a piece and it be successful?
Exactly. You said it perfectly. Thank you.
I think something else that you can kind of add on to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like one thing that, you know, until you can really like be super clear as to like, you know, or really nail like what it is you're trying to study, something else you just have to do in general is just draw a lot.
Yes.
I mean, you know, like you're in the beginning, like it can be really confusing, and you're going to fumble around a lot. You're going to make a ton of mistakes, but before you can really like make, you know, learning Renetic and kind of latch on to what exactly it is you're trying to retain from studying, you're just going to need to sit down and do the work. Like just practice drawing, practice making marks, try drawing different things, whatever. And then eventually you can sit down and be like, okay, so I know how to draw decently in black and white. How can I look at like, say, Miles Johnston's work and be like, how can I control values like that? You know, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you definitely have to put in like a ton of work before you can really get to that. But once you do, just, you know, try. Like the main point I think I'm trying to make is I had this issue where you can get really daunted by like looking at someone else's work and being like, okay, let me try to study deliberately. And you're kind of like, oh gosh, they're fumbling around, making a ton of mistakes, and you're like, really, you like see it almost as this impossible task, and that can almost keep you from drawing. Don't let that happen.
Yeah, I agree totally. Very important that you realize that you have to draw a lot, and you have to embrace that. You really have to repeat it many times, and it's never going to be perfect, to be honest. Like the sensation that something is done, it's much better than the sensation that something is perfect, because if you feel that something is perfect, it's probably not perfect. You're just like looking at you don't know how to see the mistakes yet, right? So it's a lot about really repeating and then enjoying the painting itself, the process of painting itself, not necessarily the result, right? You like drawing, not necessarily you like all the pieces that you do, and you really try, and you really just stare at your work every day. So I think that is very helpful to understand that the process is the part that you have to learn. The final painting is just the result, right?
Yeah, I think cultivating sort of like a passion for it, like just the process in of itself, is going to be like, I think that's kind of like what you're getting at there, is like just cultivating a love for actually doing the work, and then you'll get better, you know, just by the amount you're doing, rather than just seeking some kind of perfection for one piece and then just being stuck on it, you know?
Yeah. So anybody who's listening to saying like, okay, you know, how to study and how to study effectively, just if you don't know like specifically narrow it down, just draw.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that thing that it's much easier to direct your studies after you started doing something than figuring out a specific plan of action for every drawing that you're going to do for a year and then start drawing. That's not going to work. It's much better if you just start doing one drawing a day or just drawing something, and then you like assess that, you realize the mistakes that you're doing, you try to correct it, and then you have a more specific way of studying, right? So I think the combination of drawing a lot and evaluating the way that you're drawing and the mistakes that you're making will actually make you understand what kind of studies you have to do, right?
Oh, that makes complete sense. Like I do that to myself. Like I'll get like a good ways into a piece, and then I'll go away for an hour. I'll come back to it, and I'll ask myself, why does this suck? You know, like what's wrong with it? You know, sometimes you just got to get something kind of out there so that you can ask yourself what's wrong with it. You know, so I think that's constant drawing. You know.
Yeah, you must not fear the bad image, right? You have to embrace it. The bad image is gonna help you to learn things, right? You must not fear doing a bad drawing when you're starting to study. Never.
And another thing, like we were talking about,
failure is necessary.
Yeah.
Another thing we were talking about earlier is just like, don't be afraid to put your stuff online. Like, you know, get out there and make friends. Like there's a ton of other artists like on the internet, you know, and you can get help from those people.
Yeah, that is super helpful.
You know, don't be afraid to ask people that are even working professionals. Be like, hey, can you maybe help me with this, or can you take a look at my work and just ask me how to improve or something specific? I mean, you know, we're not like all scary people.
Exactly. And it's also the thing that sometimes we feel we have to be ready to post, or the word like, I'm not ready yet, I'm not perfect yet, I'm not ready. And it's you're probably I never actually felt ready, to be honest. I never actually felt that feeling of, okay, I'm ready now. When, you know, Blizzard asked me to do the Hearthstone paintings and Riot asked me to do the splashes, I did not feel, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm completely ready. Everything's perfect. It's always the feeling of, okay, I might be able to do this. I'll try. Right?
You gotta like trust yourself that you'll be able to figure it out. It's like,
and I think.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that the ready image is very much like it doesn't exist at all. You really learn by doing it. You don't learn before how to do a painting and then you do your first painting, right? It's not like that. You learn how to paint by painting, right? So I think again, the process is the important part, not necessarily the finished image or the finished look or the perfect or whatever it is that we are seeking sometimes.
Yeah, the idea of ready is almost an impossible thing, like in my opinion, like because it's something that I'm personally doing. This kind of goes on a tangent, but I'm writing a manga, and you know when you're doing something like that, like I used to think that, oh man, I got to have this entire story fleshed out. I got to have like all the dialogue done. I got to have all the stuff, whatever. But then you realize that you're like, okay, when I start making comic pages, there's no way that I'm not going to come up with a scenario in my head because when you're doing the illustrations, you almost get into the characters' mindsets. You're thinking about them. You're basically like living with them, you know, so you're exploring possibilities as you go. So there is never going to be this moment where you're like, you have everything completely hammered out and you're like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. You can have all the major points, but it's important to keep yourself open to exploring, you know, further into other areas. So like ready really isn't a thing. The most important thing is just to go ahead and do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's something
so whatever it is that you want to do, just do.
Yeah, 100%.
Let it evolve. I think, like if you never start it, you know, because you don't think you're ready, you know, it's not, you know, when you first start, it's going to be bad, but that's all right, because like then you have something laid out that you can work from, you know, a base, a spawning point, basically.
We have another really good question, and this is something I think about a lot too. But I mean, you can be as specific or as ambiguous as you want. But there's a says, how do you manage like the business side of being a freelancer, as well as like working for international companies, managing taxes? Basically the business side, just in general. Like,
I try to not do the work as much as I can. The work, I mean the the business side of it. I try to have other people do it for me because I really want to focus on the art side of it. So, and also I think that's something that helps me a lot, because if I didn't do that, I would be super overwhelmed with I don't know, with things that are not painting, and that I would paint for like 2 hours a day if I actually went there and did all the things that involved the business side of painting.
yeah.
But by business side, you mean taxes and all of that. And yeah, I try to let other people do it for me. Of course, I'm not really. I try not to be scammed or anything, but yeah, I try to not do as much as I can, so I can focus on the part that I like, which is painting. And I'm not sure exactly what you mean about the business side of it.
I think they just mean like, how do you manage like I don't know, just I mean, I guess with the business side of things, like what would it be?
One part of his question was like, since you're from Brazil, like he was wanting to know like how like what it's like how do you work with these international companies, I guess. Like what that experience is like.
Yeah, I said that I try not to do much of the business side, but I basically have to, because there's a lot of things you have to do to like get paid from a international company when you're from Brazil, because it really looks like the company is doing something sketchy when they're sending money to Brazil, right? For a quote illustrator, right? But yeah, I had to go to the bank like multiple times and like solve problems many times. But I basically get paid through bank, which is pretty basic. But the things that I have to show the contracts, and I have to basically prove that it is actually a game company that is paying me to do illustrations. I have to like prove it in a way by just scanning the contracts and sending it to the bank, or maybe going to the bank. So I have to do quite a few things regarding that.
It's a hassle.
Yeah, sometimes it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have another guy asking when you're going to release an art book.
I don't know.
Someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But thanks. That is super cool that you asked.
I'm glad you're interested. Yeah.
Ooh, actually, I just thought of a pretty good question, because I actually just got the iPad Pro and the iPencil. Have you messed around with that?
Yeah, I have. I don't have one, but I tried it a few times. I really want one. If it wasn't like double the price here in Brazil, I would get one right now. But yeah, I'll probably get one when I go to probably THU this year or some event for sure. Which is it feels really good. It just feels like sketching, but digitally, but not digitally. It's something new. I don't know.
It almost feels traditional. Like it really, like it almost does like feel like sketching in a sketchbook.
Yeah, definitely. But with like the advantages of going back and doing all the color dot stuff.
So like, do you have any events coming up that, like, speaking of like, going to things, like, do you have anything coming up that people can, like, I don't know, kind of like look forward to seeing you at? Or
I have IFCC coming up and THU for now. IFCC is in May and THU is in like September. I'm going to both of the events. It's gonna be cool.
I think think we got one more question from the users. Let's see. When you're exploring at the beginning, do you use like the exploration stage to like figure out your like how you're going to handle your edges, or do you kind of refine that later as you go?
Yeah, I think edges. Yeah, edges are. I try to work on later, sort of like as I go. It's not something I think about before I start the painting or at the very beginning stages. It's more like a decision you make when you're painting something, right? For instance, like this guy, I decided to make like a hard edge here and then soft edge here because of the muscle, right? Because of the curve. So yeah, I didn't really think about that before I started out, but when I'm doing the thing, I try to think about the edges. But again, like edges also could mean that you're talking about the sort of like the value structure of your painting. I'm not sure what exactly you mean by edges, because sometimes, because this is also an edge, right? When you like do that, it's like a soft edge. You're almost losing it, but you're also thinking about the value. So yeah, I try to think about the value structure before, but the actual edge, it's only when I'm actually doing the specific thing. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's somebody who's asking about IFCC. They're saying, do you think it would be worth it for a beginner? Like in some countries, it's apparently pretty costly.
Yeah, I think it's better when you have like something to show, because I'm not sure exactly what you mean by beginner, like, but I would say that it's better if you have something to show to people. You have work to get some critiques and a sketchbook, and you can sketch with people and all of that. I think the event's much better when you do that, but it's valuable for everyone, to be honest, because the experience that you get seeing a lot of different artists and forming friendships and all that it's awesome. For instance, Evan and I, we met at IFCC 2015 by accident, to be honest. Yeah. We were both speakers there, and we got to the hotel they had for us, and we actually decided to get an Airbnb together. And then, yeah, that was it.
Oh, wow.
And we're like pretty close friends. It's awesome we sometimes sketch together, and at those events we hang out a lot, which is super cool. Evan is a big inspiration, and it's cool to be like able to hang out with him. The dude is awesome.
I think that's like a really good point. Is like there's nothing bad that can come from like, you know, any kind of exposure. Like if you're gonna go to IFCC, or if you're just posting your stuff online, like there's absolutely like nothing but good can come from that. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I've met like some people, like my buddy Henrik. Like I've met with some people on, you know, just online through like art and whatnot, that are like really close friends that, you know, I wouldn't have met had I not posted stuff, or, you know, just decided to just say, okay, let's just go ahead and do this and not worry so much about, you know, being a beginner, whatever. So I think that, you know, anybody that wants to do that, just go ahead and take the leap.
Yeah, one thing that it's cool about that is that when Riot got in contact with me, they said that they were watching my stuff for like some time, and they really enjoyed that I was really passionate about like growing and developing, and then they really liked that I was growing a lot, like I was learning and getting better. So yeah, I had no idea that they were looking at my stuff when I was posting it online, but they were, and they really enjoyed the growth. So I think one cool thing is that don't really dismiss it, but just because you think it's bad, sometimes it's good that you to post it and then you get better, right? in that
I think it shows you that, you know, with that constant work too, like they were looking to see how passionate you are about it and how seriously you'll take the work if they were to hire you too. And so just showing that kind of commitment, and you're, you know, at the very least that you're committed to the ideology of like growth and becoming better, you know, probably spoke as much volume as your actual work to them.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think you should post like everything you do like all the time, but you know, not posting online it's different. We're talking about like a very the other end.
Yeah, there's kind of a fine balance. You can get caught up in, I think if you get caught up in like chasing, you know, oh, I need to get 30 likes on this, you know, you kind of lose that creativity almost.
Yeah, there's always a balance like in everything, right? Yeah. I think exactly the same as you. Like sometimes you can get caught in that likes or anything, but I think it's also not very good.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrible.
That's something that, like, I mean, granted, no, I can't really, like, I don't know. I can't really say too much about it, but like, there's something that kind of like can frustrate me like a little bit, or I don't completely understand, is like when I see like when somebody posts like 50 updates for the same piece, and it's like, okay, here's a little bit of a sketch, and then like 10 minutes later, it's like, okay, here's like a couple, here's the sketch a little further, and then like 10
Added
minutes.
a nostril.
Yeah, I'm starting to get like little. I'm like, please just stop. You know, it's, you know, like, and that's something that, like, I mean, like I said, it's not, you know, maybe that works for them. I don't know, but like you see that actually, like if you pay attention to like the likes, like in the beginning they get like a ton, and then they deteriorate as they go with all the updates. So it's kind of like they might have.
Travis is talking about me. That's what.
But yeah, that's just the thing with me. I don't know. Like, as I see that, I'm like, wouldn't it be better just to kind of save that for like that? Be like, okay, here's the finished thing. Take a look.
Yeah.
We missed a question actually. Hold on. Here's one more. Yeah, someone was wanting to know, like, how do you break from like a sort of speed paint mentality, or like a, you know, just like a loose paint mentality, and kind of get a mindset to kind of put in the hours for like a finished piece, I guess.
So you mean the difference between when I'm sketching and when I'm doing a finished piece? That is that it?
Yeah, let me just read it exact here. Let me see. Yeah. So how do you break away from the speed painting mentality, the feeling that the image should be finished faster, and you lose time while working on it? Like I guess how many like hours, I guess.
Basically slowing down. How do you slow down and not rush a painting, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's what he's looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's just trying to not rush the painting and just actively trying to not rush it and not jump steps, and just finish what you're doing, like tunnel vision, like focus on the line drawing when you're doing the line drawing, ignore the colors, or just focus on one thing. Even when you're actually working with colors, just focus on establishing what you want with color. And I think it's just being able to tunnel vision what you want in the painting. And also one thing about that is that the more you practice the fundamentals, the better you will get at not really having to think that much when you're doing a painting. And I'm talking about like values, for instance. You don't have to actually think about what value you're selecting and you're putting on the canvas, and what exactly how bright is it exactly, the number and all of that. You sort of like feel it. You understand. Yeah. You understand what value it is because you did so many times. You did a lot of paintings, and you really don't have to think about it actively that much anymore. And that's why you practice fundamentals, so you don't have to think about everything at once. But when
Yeah,
you're
develop
starting
that.
out, yeah, when you're starting out, there's no other way. You really have to slow down and think about each specific step, because you're not able to just do it in a more loose way, and then letting the fundamentals speak through your hand, right? You actually have to think about every decision you make, and that sometimes can annoy you, but at the beginning, that's what you got to do. It's really slow down and focus on one part, and then also practice fundamentals. By fundamentals, I mean basic drawing, lighting, colors, composition, design, all of that in a separate way, like doing gesture drawings, doing anatomy drawings, and all of that. So you are strong enough to not think about it that much when you're doing your paintings later, right? But there's no other way. You just have to practice the fundamentals until you're able to maybe jump some steps, or maybe not worry about everything, or yeah. I think that's it. I'm sorry if I didn't answer
No.
your question.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's something I was realizing recently with a piece is like instead of, because like sometimes I get ahead of myself and I'll get like the loose sketch, but then I'll leave an area of my piece like not sketched because I want to go to the rendering the face or something, and then I left like the shoulders or something not detailed. But like looking at each stage to like trying to get a complete piece out of each stage, like is the sketch in and of itself finished? All right, is the base color in itself finished? You know, like recently I've been like kind of retraining my brain to do that, because like I'll put myself in a hole. Like if I had like a character and like it was like their upper body and like I've got their arm and their hand in a pose, and like I spent all the time sketching the face and stuff, and then I wanted to jump to render, but I didn't, you know, really fine tune the line work on the hand or something. And then later I find out it's a mistake, like I made a mistake or something, and you know, it's harder to fix that in the rendering stage.
Exactly, man. Exactly. I think the hard part of painting is fixing mistakes. Is not actually doing the mistakes, doing the things. Like I think what really takes time in a painting, what makes you slow, is fixing mistakes all the time. Just, oh, this hand is wrong, and then you fix the hand, and the head is wrong, and then you try to fix the head, and then the ear is wrong, and then you fix the ear, and
It's almost always in the sketch. Like,
you just Frankenstein your way into a finished painting, right? I think that's what takes a lot of time. When you see an artist that is fast, they are not necessarily fast. They don't move their brush in a very quick way. They just make less decisions, but correct decisions, or more direct decisions, not necessarily 100% correct, but more direct, right?
Yeah, they're more deliberate, like with what they're doing. Like I was actually watching a thing with Jim Lee, who's like a comic artist for DC, and he was talking about how like a lot of like basically what we're talking about now, how a lot of people just want to immediately go into trying to do like either be fast or try to do like an efficient like or a finished product. And he's like, the only reason I can do something quickly is because I'm deliberate. Like I've done it a lot. I know where I'm going. He's like, I'm not really moving quickly. I'm just making deliberate decisions. And
unconscious, competent, you know, that perfect autopilot stage almost.
Yeah, and he said the same thing about like mistake making, where he was like, oh, well, most of the time the mistakes I'm making aren't, you know, they have nothing to do with rendering. They usually have to do with the sketch, you know, or like, you know, are my hands right? Is my composition right? Like, is my and that's where he goes into talking about like gestures and how like important they can be, because if you're, you know, if you're doing like a drawing, you want it to be like, you want it to be fluid, you want it to have like emotion and energy. You don't want it to be like a breadstick, you know, like some rigid thing, you know. But yeah. Anyway, random tangent there.
Since we're on the topic of your studies, like your fundamentals and everything, someone was wanting to know, like, how many hours do you spend a day, like, working just in general? Like, how many hours a day do you spend painting, would you say?
Nowadays, probably like 10, I think, around 10 or maybe more, because I know this is not very good for me, but it's hard to deny a lot of projects because it's cool stuff, and I wanna. I just really want to paint. I just want to have fun with a lot of different clients and different paintings. And I also teach in Brazil, so I have that as well, where I go to a school and 2 times a week, and I teach for like 3 hours, so it's like 6 hours a week, and I sketch during the time that it takes me to get there by train, and then I get home and I do something. So it adds up, but I don't really feel overwhelmed when I'm painting, and I don't actually
like you
have
jump around what you do.
Yeah,
so kind of
yeah, it's very important that you exercise and do other things. You stretch and then get up, and don't really spend 10 hours sitting on a chair, and because it gets to you really fast. We actually, I don't think we know yet what the effects are gonna be, because their computers have been here for not that long, right? So maybe in like 50 years we probably have like a clear idea of how dangerous it is to be sitting.
Going to us,
or something like that. I'm sure it's not gonna be like great news, probably.
I'm ruined.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's very important to take breaks, to do other things as well. But yeah, I paint probably like 10 hours every day.
To take that a little further, like I'm just curious, like how much time do you spend, like, you know, with that 10 hours? Like, how do you relegate it? Is there like a certain amount of hours you spend on your actual work, and then a certain amount of hours you spend studying, or do you just kind of wing it?
Yes. No, I actually every day I have a specific schedule that I want to do. I have a specific set of things that I do. I have a board in front of me right now, and then every day, actually the day before, I write down what I'm gonna do the next day, with times, like a specific time for every task. I start by the most important task, and then I go slowly to the less important task. So today, for instance, I started with I'm reading my board actually. I started with gesture drawing and reading Drawn to Life, which is a book from Walt Steinfeld. It's a really good book on gesture drawing. And like 1 hour from of that, and then I do my riot work, which is like I have to do I think 8 hours of riot work. So most of the work I do is for riot, right? And I do like 4 hours of that, then I exercise, and then I have lunch, and then I go back and then do a lot of riot again, and then I finish that, and I have an interview, which is now. And then after this I'll have dinner, and then I'll do free sketch, which is whatever I want. I'll do something. Yeah, and then I have I have like 30 minutes to answer some questions or emails and things, because sometimes I get some of that, and then I go to sleep. That's it for today.
So I bet
It's like right before you go to bed.
Go on vacation.
What?
I said I bet it feels nice when you get to go on like a vacation or something, and you're like,
Yeah,
no more structure.
Yes, it is great. It is great. I actually went to I'm not sure if you guys know the Iguazu Falls. It's really big. You know the movie Up, right? That from Pixar.
Yeah.
With a little house on top of a big cliff and falls. So yeah, there's something similar to that here in Brazil, which is super cool. A guy built his house on one of the biggest falls on the earth, and it was his private property for like a long time. And then like I think it was 100 years ago, they decided to make it like a public thing, because no one could have such thing. It's crazy. And so there's this little house on top of a mountain, and there's like this big falls, and there's like a lot of animals. It was super cool, but it has nothing to do with the topic. But yeah,
That was interesting, actually.
That's like an epic. That sounds like an epic house, though.
Yeah. So I went there for New Year's. It was super cool. That's what I was trying to get at.
This is a little. I mean, still kind of going off topic, but like when you're not doing art, like when you do get a little time to yourself, what do you like to do? Like, how do you balance it?
I think most of the time that I'm not drawing, I'm with my girlfriend, going to the movies or hanging out with some friends. And I think movies and games are two of the biggest things I do when I'm not drawing. So it's sort of related to drawing, but I think those are the two big things I do. The exercise part is super important for me as well. I do Pilates, right? It's super nice. Yeah, it's great for your back and for you really. When you're out of it, you're really relaxed and you're really clear-minded. So I think that's probably one of the best things I do with my time because it really helps me to keep sane.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like whenever you're like I work out a lot myself. Like I'm kind of a gym rat, but like whenever when you're in the gym, you don't think about like drawing. You can't really because you're like kind of you have to think about what you're doing, like the task at hand. So having something like that where like art is completely off of your mind, like you come back and you feel like much more refreshed. Like yeah, I definitely think that's super important.
And sometimes you see big mistakes that you were doing in your piece and you had no idea and things like that just because you took a break.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get so like tunnel vision, like you're just too close to the piece and you just got to come back. That's why like I do that. Like I'll take like an hour off and then I'll come back and I'll be like, what's wrong with this?
That's the worst.
Everything is wrong.
Yeah.
This is horrible.
Actually, I wrote that yesterday where I spent like a little bit on something and I was just like, oh, this isn't so bad. And like I came back from like walking around at work and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is garbage. And I was just like, threw it away. I was like, oh, it's completely wasted my afternoon.
But yeah, I totally agree about the exercise thing.
Yeah, man.
What do you guys do when you're not drawing?
I mean, exercise, games, movies, basically exactly what you
Pretty
just
much the same thing you just said.
I play guitar.
Oh, cool.
Pretty similar principles to how you practice art. But I don't really play a lot anymore.
Should.
I try and been so focused on art that you lose grasp of other things and social situations, which are really important, but sometimes you just get caught up in studying and trying to improve. And so I picked up the guitar the other day and I like could barely move my left hand. Like, what the heck? What happened?
What's going on here?
Yeah, it was not like riding a bike again.
Yeah. No, I think that like Mike, you bring up a good point. Just keeping that social life is. I mean, actually, like especially having friends that have nothing to do with art helps me because I mean we spend so much time doing it anyway that like you don't want to talk about it sometimes when you're just like if I go out to like eat with a friend or something like that, I don't want to talk about art. Let's just talk about something else.
I think it's awesome when you are in like an environment that they don't have any idea about like games, what games are, or what like League of Legends is, and then you're surrounded because I'm surrounded by that like a lot of the time. But it's cool when I go to like my girlfriend's mom and talk to her and then hear the stories and then we hang out and it's super cool. Like my grandparents and all that. I love that kind of stuff because they don't care. They just don't care who the character is. They just think it's cool and they start to tell their own stories, which is super, super nice. I love that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing.
Yeah. And I have that a lot here where I live in Brazil. I'm not sure how it is with you guys, but most of the people, they have no idea what I do or what kind of, or that you can work for games. They just do other things and they have no idea what like that games are big. I don't know how to explain that, but I think you guys understand, right?
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
have like a notion of what the actual business is like or what it entails or like how this stuff is put together, really.
Yeah, sometimes that's bad, but sometimes it's cool.
Yeah, Cole
When
and
you're at the bank, when you're at the bank trying to explain that you're not like a drug dealer from Brazil, yeah, that's bad. But yeah, in other situations, it's pretty cool.
Cole and I both live we both live in Kentucky, so like it's like that people here have no like semblance as to like what art is, like art industry even is, like most of the time, like
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I used to think that was like a curse because it was like, oh man, nobody understands this. Like it's hard to talk to anybody about it. Now I think it's like a blessing because I like have all these like people that are art-wise on my Facebook and on the internet and everything. So I'm like, okay, I got my art stuff, but here I got people I can talk to, and then Cole's actually local, so I do have someone local to talk to. But everybody else is like, oh, that's a pretty picture.
Like, thanks. I spent 12 hours on it.
That's cool.
We got a question for you from someone from Brazil was wanting to know: is it possible to live as a freelance artist out of I think it's Sao Paulo, or
yeah, it's where or what? Sorry.
he's wanting to know if he can like have a freelance gig there, or if he should move, I guess.
Yeah, I live in very close to São Paulo. It's a city called Osasco, which it's basically São Paulo. It's like a satellite city. I'm not sure if that's the name you use, but it's a city that is basically part of the big São Paulo. So yeah, that's exactly what I do. So yes, you can.
There you go. It's possible.
It is possible. No. Aren't you? But yeah, it's cool. We should actually hang out sometime. I'm not sure who you are, but we should.
Hey, might be want to join your what was it, your coffee drawing sessions with like
yes.
Rodrigo and stuff. Like you have like a pretty small group that you get together with, right? Like Rodrigo, and I think Ursula is one of them too. And
yeah. It's like I think it was like 5 people that went there, but we probably have like 20 people or like more than 10 different artists that we meet like from time to time to sketch or talk. We mostly talk about art and basically this, right? And we sketch a little bit. But yeah.
So it's like, okay, let's get together to draw. Oh no, let's just talk, have coffee.
Yes. Exactly.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask a couple of technical questions, like as I was watching him paint here. Like when you started this piece, I noticed like you started in like pretty much just like black and white, and then you introduced like color of hard light layers. Is that like typically how you go about introducing your color?
Yeah. Sometimes I add color underneath or manually, like not necessarily with a layer mode, but I guess so. I guess that's the way I usually do it, by adding layers on top.
Yeah, just curious because like the way I always work is like I noticed like when you were doing like the black and white section of it, like you were just like putting the strokes and you let like the background be the midtone. Like usually like I feel like I have to have like a base built in, but honestly, it seems to look a lot cooler the way you do it.
No, that's something that I brought up from traditional explorations that we were talking about earlier. Letting the sort of like the paper come out of the drawing, sort of like this.
Yeah, it felt like
for instance, like this highlight. Yeah, so this highlight, for instance, is actually the background, and yeah, I like that.
That was just very interesting to see that kind of strategy because like it felt like very like traditional painting and whatnot. And like I've been like stuck on like what I've been doing is like I put in like a solid base tone like under my line work, and then like I do like a clipping mask. and like
That
put
is
in
cool
like a
too.
gradient with a soft round. Like it works out, but like I've been trying to get things more painterly, and like watching you do that was like kind of eye opening. So I was just curious to see if like that was like kind of like a sort of a go-to method for you. And then like I guess you just keep adding more color with normal layers as you go.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. But yeah, exactly. And at this point, I'm not actually adding that much to the drawing, but I have to do the last like 20% of the drawing, so like those
Fine-tuning.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But a
don't
lot of the
change
time, I feel like
much
I'm,
too. I
I
noticed.
feel like I'm not adding much. But sorry, what you were saying?
I was just saying, it seems like you just use like a pretty standard brushes too for the most part, like just a couple
Yeah,
rounds and a texture.
Yeah, I'm actually using the hard round brush for this one, and I actually had some texture for this, but yeah, that was it. Maybe some soft brush as well somewhere. I don't know.
Awesome.
I don't remember.
I did something.
For those of you that are listening, like anybody that like, I think this is pretty much the same approach, but like anybody who wants to know like more about like Mike's process, especially with like color and such, you have a gumroad. See, yeah, he has a gumroad on your color process, and this looks like just an expanded version of like the sketch that you did.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to know that is definitely there. Well worth it.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I actually picked
It's been a while.
Learn more about color because I liked how you use like more saturation and stuff like that in certain places. And it's pretty. Like, what did you actually do to study color like for yourself? Like myself, I have like the James Gurney book, Color and Light, that I'm working through.
Yeah, that is really good. I think a bunch of different sources, to be honest. I don't think one specific thing. What I did is I tried to see a bunch of different sources, of different references for color and books and tutorials and all that. Those things like Sam Nielsen's and Nathan Folks and basically all of it. And then I tried to create my own set of rules when trying to not to have a formula for it, but trying to create my own set of rules to understanding how color works. Also doing a bunch of studies from life that helped a lot to understand how color changes from a different light source. And yeah, I think it was a lot of interpretation of different sources. And I think like that's the best way to learn something, is to sort of like create your own little rule based on something that you see, not
Sort
necessarily.
of your interpretation of it.
Yeah. Because I think there are different stages to thinking, different levels of thinking. There's like the easiest one is like remembering something, which is the thing that we were talking about before, like remembering how the artist uses core shadows or occlusion shadows is remembering something. I think that after that is like understanding, also understanding where does the artist use the core shadows and all of that. The third one would be like probably like applying it to your own paintings. Then like understanding how did you apply that, so analyzing that. And then after you analyze that, you create your own way of using that knowledge that you got from the core shadow that you studied and you applied and you did all of that process, right? I think does that make sense? I think those different levels of thinking are really the key to learn and faster and remember the knowledge that you have.
No, definitely.
Right?
A lot of sense.
Oh, cool.
Nah, you nailed it for sure. Well, man, I think we're about an hour and a half. Something that we do like toward the end of the interview is kind of like do we have like a name for it, Cole? Where it's just like you're
Just like parting words of wisdom. Any general advice for the audience, I guess.
General advice, I guess just have fun. Painting is supposed to be fun for me. I think sometimes we get caught on trying to be too serious about it, but I think at the end of the day, you should be having fun when you're painting, and just try to I don't know, just remember why you paint when you're painting. Not necessarily try to be exactly like other people, but try to remember why you started and why you do it. And your work's probably going to be way more honest that way, and people are going to see the soul that you put into it in the final painting. And I think that's super important to really let yourself in your paintings, right? No, I don't know. I think that and have a lot of fun, and remember that it's a long journey. So enjoy every painting, right? Or try to enjoy every painting. Try to enjoy the process of painting instead of thinking about that final painting that you do before you die, and you realize, oh, that's perfect, and then you die. I think sometimes we think about that. We think that moment's gonna come, like the moment that we do a perfect painting and everything aligns, and then we die. I think that's just never true. I think it's much more about enjoying the process and the painting, and just doing one at a time, doing your best, moving to the next, and then having fun like that, right? And thanks so much for inviting me. It's super cool that you guys are doing this.
Yeah.
I hope it was somehow informative or somehow it helped
time.
someone.
dude, anytime, man. Like
Yes.
it was really good. Like I was glad to finally like actually get a chance to talk to you, because like I know we talked like a bunch in the chat before, so it was nice to actually like get in here and hang out for a little bit.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah. If you can drop us a copy of that the chart, because it looks like a lot of people are asking for the study chart that you
Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, the process
I'll
thing.
share that for you.
Yeah, sure. Sure, no problem.
And be sure to check out his Gumroad, everybody. And yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. Yeah, thanks again, Mike, for coming on. Great talking to you.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks, guys, for having me, and see you guys.
It's been awesome.
We'll catch everybody next time.